Dark nights of the soul, the peace that surpasses human understanding, cosmic consciousness, mysticism, oneness, surrender, witness consciousness. These are some of the topics we will dive into today. Hello, everyone, and welcome back or welcome for the first time to my channel. I'm Davina Kotulski, self-help author, psychologist, life coach, and New Thought spiritual practitioner. This channel is dedicated to personal growth, spirituality, health, and well-being, and everything we talk about on this channel is about supporting our mind, body, and spirit on our journey to healing and transformation. Today, it's my pleasure to bring you former Catholic nun turned Agape and Centers for Spiritual Living ordained minister and one of the Sacred Seven who envisioned the Agape International Spiritual Center, Reverend Joan Steadman. Reverend Joan was inducted into the Martin Luther King Hall of Preachers at Morehouse College, and she was awarded the Gandhi Ikeda King Award for Peace and Unity in the community. She received congressional recognition by Representative Barbara Lee in 2014, and in August of 2021, she was a recipient of the Walden Award for New Thought Wisdom. Reverend Joan is a teacher, a preacher, and a mystic. Please welcome Reverend Joan Steadman. Applause.
Thank you so much, Davina. Thank you. Thank
Um,
you.
it's a pleasure to be with you here today, Reverend Joan. Thank you so much for saying yes to this interview. We met back in 2008 at the Oakland Center for Spiritual Living, where you were the community spiritual leader there. And it was my good fortune to study with you for at least 4 years before I finished my spiritual prac training down at Agape with Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith. Um, and you have had a fascinating journey, a fascinating spiritual journey. Do you mind if we just begin talking about your spiritual journey first, and maybe some of your experiences and challenges you've had along the way?
Sure. Thank you so much, Davina. It's such a pleasure to be here. I feel graced and honored. Thank you. And hello, everyone. I'm so glad to meet you virtually. And just know that we're all connected in the one. And so this is a rich time, and wherever you are in your consciousness supports us in doing this work as well. So, my journey, how to condense it, actually, it kind of started when I was a little kid. And I knew, first of all, I was raised Catholic, of course, and I knew I wanted to be a nun. I just knew that from the very earliest. I think because it's the way I saw to the spiritual path. Um, if I'd been raised Buddhist, I probably would have done a Buddhist nun or whatever. But anyway, I got that really early on, and I remember my first communion, which as Catholics we take a first communion, and I remember just feeling the presence of God in me so strongly, knowing that that presence was all around and within me, and so that was powerful. And then skip ahead many, many years after I graduated from high school. I entered the convent, the Immaculate Heart community in LA area, Los Angeles area. And it was such a wise decision because they were a very progressive and still are a very progressive spiritual community where all of my old Catholic ideas pretty much got dissolved. And I began to see things in a new light, in a mystical light, very mystical community, very socially active and oriented, um, which also was new to me because my family was very conservative Republican family. Not that conservative Republicans can't be socially oriented, but that wasn't the orientation of my family.
Mm.
And so this was just even opened me up to what was going on more in the world and how to be a spiritual presence in the light of all of that. And that was in the 1960s. Martin Luther King Jr. was leading the civil rights. John Kennedy was president, Robert Kennedy, and of course, all three of them were assassinated too. So it was a very powerful era, and um, just a lot was going on in society. And actually, if as I look back, it would have been very helpful for me if I had some of the spiritual tools that I have now, which I can share with you. So after I left the convent, I was there for 9 years. I basically was an agnostic then for another 9 years because my whole idea of God had pretty much dissolved itself, had broken down. And so I wasn't quite sure, I still had a sense there was something but didn't know what it was. So I was kind of in the desert. And during that desert time, I got married, had two beautiful children, beautiful daughters, um, and kept feeling the spiritual longing for a deep spiritual life that was different from what I had experienced. I started doing yoga. That was helpful.
Mm.
And it kind of started me up in meditation again. And here's something interesting I want to tell you all that once you develop a strong practice of meditation and prayer, if you're away from it, I was away from it for many, many years, it just immediately comes back.
Mm.
It's like that it was engraved in my soul, and then it was immediately easy to start doing it again. Um, so I wanted to share that. Yes, Davina.
Do you mind if we just go back for just a quick second? So,
Sure.
since you were young, you felt a spiritual calling to come
Yeah,
to the spiritual path. You were raised in the tradition of Catholicism.
yeah,
So, as a young person, you were like, well, it would make the most sense to pursue that because that was what you grew up in.
right.
So, then when you graduated high school, you went into the convent, you followed that calling. And then you said when you were there, your concepts of God started to break down. Can you say more about that? What broke down?
Oh, that's a good question. This particular community, and by the way, now they are a lay community. They aren't a religious order anymore,
Mhm.
because when Pope John 23rd told everybody to open the doors of the church, open wide, we did that. And then the Catholic hierarchy was not happy with us. In fact, there's a whole book about that whole experience we went through. It's pretty illuminating, actually, about the hierarchical structure.
Uh-huh.
Kind of like these women, what are they doing, you know? And so, yeah, anyway,
So you
that
experienced
was,
sexism in the church. You
yeah.
experienced maybe some hypocrisy in the church.
Oh, hypocrisy, yes,
Uh-huh.
absolutely. Lots of it. Yeah.
So did that break down your concept of God, or did it break down your concept of like, did you become more, did you sort of outgrow the confines of the
Yeah.
church?
I think what it was I outgrew grew it. Actually, what else contributed, what it contributed most to that
Mhm.
was the fact that we weren't into dogma and doctrine so much.
Uh-huh.
Not that we
Mysticism.
didn't believe it, but it just wasn't emphasized. What was emphasized was love and compassion and
Mm.
social justice, and you know, with and there was a lot of time in meditation and prayer and spiritual reading and just and of course community was wonderful. Not that people didn't have their traits, you know,
Mhm.
and their idiosyncrasies. We
Sure.
all did. But you know, it was just beautiful and supportive. And at a certain point, and then this whole thing with the hierarchy, which happened toward the end of my time there. Um, After I left, and the reason I left, I kept saying it was because I wanted to be more free. The reality is, as I look back, I
Mhm.
was free. You know, we all were in that environment.
Mhm.
It was more, I had given what I had to give. I had received what I had, you know,
Uh-huh.
come to receive. And I just needed a more expansive way, perhaps.
Mm.
That's not what I would have said at the time, because I
Uh-huh.
didn't have the consciousness to see that.
Got it.
Now I look back and I see, oh, okay, yeah, there was just another calling on my heart. And yeah,
Yeah. And you mentioned mysticism, that there was mysticism there. How would you
yes.
describe mysticism?
Mysticism to me is simply a mystic, is simply someone who's aware of the presence of spirit or whatever you want to call it
Mhm.
as your life, within you, as you, you know. And it doesn't even have to be as you, actually, because I think, like Saint Mother Teresa was a mystic. And I don't know that she ever would have said spirit as me, but
Mm.
I certainly know that she saw it in herself, and she certainly saw it in the people that she served,
Yeah,
you
for
know, the
sure.
suffering people that she served. So when I look back at some mystics and some of the traditions, those traditions kind of affected how their mysticism unrolled itself and
Makes sense.
you know,
Yeah.
unfurled itself. So to me, a mysticism is the study, not the study, the experience of oneness, basically. And it's not something. Mysticism isn't something that you um, intellectualize. or you think about, or that's why I took back the word study, because it's
Mm-hmm.
not something you really study.
Yeah,
What's coming through
experiential.
now is it's something I fell into, so to speak. It
Nice.
was just a predisposition, for whatever reason, I don't know, but I'm grateful. I'm grateful that it was, you know.
And what you said that you left and you felt agnostic, uh, so not believing that there wasn't a God, but
Right.
questioning where was God? Would you say that was a dark night of the soul that
Yeah,
you?
I think so. Again, when I look back, there was a lot of joy because I had my family,
Mhm.
and it was also, in terms of my inner spirit, it was dark. It was like, I know I want something. My soul thirsts for something. What is that? And so I was really open. And then I actually, I haven't told many people this, but I actually found a yoga program on
Mhm.
TV, and that's how I started yoga, really.
Oh,
Every morning at like 6 or 6:30, I would do that before everybody else was awake. And that was wonderful. Um,
yeah.
that really was helpful. And they do a little bit of meditation at the end, and that was quite lovely.
And
And
yoga
yeah,
really was meant to be a spiritual path. It's not
it
an
was.
exercise. Yeah, the
Exactly.
West
See,
has turned it into exercise,
right.
but its initial the East for the East it is spirituality.
It's a spirituality, yeah. And
Spiritual.
my former husband, I don't like using the word ex, so I
Mhm.
use the word, my former husband, had been a little bit into yoga. He had been into all kinds of things. He'd been into Zen Buddhism. He'd been into yoga. And as when he mentioned yoga, I was just intrigued by it. And I wasn't looking for it. I just happened to come across it. It's what happens when you're leaning in a particular direction, when your soul's calling you, the practice is going to show up, or the teacher's going to show up, or.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, are you open to talking about maybe well, actually, before let's go back to your story. So,
Yeah.
uh, you were into yoga, you had left the convent,
Right.
you had your kids, and your soul was still wanting something more. What happened?
Right. And the way that unfolded, I found what was then called religious science. It's now Centers for Spiritual Living. I was in a play group with my kids. We
Hmm.
had taken some classes, some mommy and me classes together, and
Oh, wow.
and then some of us formed this play group. And it turns out we all were talking one day about spirituality, and this person in the play group said, well, this is what everybody else was Catholic or Presbyterian or whatever. And she talked about this Fullerton Church of Religious Science that she was going to. And she talked about how it was affecting her life and some of the basic principles, oneness with spirit, um, law of cause and effect or karma, different spiritual. And I was intrigued by that. And so I thought, oh, I'm gonna go check this out. It took me a few months to go. And the funny thing was, the first Sunday I went, she wasn't even there that Sunday. And then when I got there, I heard the prayer and was like, oh, I've got to learn that. So
Hmm.
I found a pamphlet and went home and learned that right away. And just once again, all of my spiritual practices were activated. And then I started taking classes because it's a mystical teaching.
Hmm.
And this is what finally touched my soul. Like, oh, okay, this I can really get into. And once I went, I was all in because I could see the beauty of it, the mysticism of it. I wouldn't have called it mysticism then,
Uh-huh.
frankly, Davina.
And when you talk about the law of cause and effect, can you
Yeah.
speak to that just for a moment?
Yeah, because it's evolved for
Hmm.
me. That's back in those days. This was like 1979, actually, that I'll never forget, November 1979.
Wow.
And taking the classes that, basically it's the law of attraction that a lot of people know now, that what you put forth comes back to you when you pray and affirm certain things, they manifest. What else about cause and effect? Um, you can jump in here too, Davina, because the
Yeah.
thing is, I'm not as much into that now.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I'll
So kind
talk
of like
about
what you
the
think
evolution.
about, you bring about kind of an
Yeah,
idea.
what you think about your
Mhm.
thoughts or things, and all of that is true at a certain level,
Uh-huh.
you know. And then there are not higher levels, but just more expanded levels,
Hmm. Hmm.
you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
So
definitely, and Reverend Michael talks about some of those things in his life
yeah,
vision book about
yeah.
manifestation, attraction, and then some of the other levels, God as me, God through me.
Right, those stages of consciousness. And
Yeah.
the other laws that it's evolved into is the law of radiance,
Uh-huh.
where who you are radiates out.
Yeah.
And then the other one is the law of emergence. You know, when the
Mhm.
conditions are ripe for something, it
Absolutely.
emerges.
Yeah.
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 So, and that makes a lot more sense to me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, in
So,
that sense, it just feels. Yeah.
uh, so originally you studied Ernest Holmes and
Mhm.
some mine and the different teachers that go into
Yeah.
that have contributed to that
Yeah.
field of knowledge. And then you decided you wanted to go deeper. So you're
Mhm.
taking classes. You decided to become a practitioner.
Well, yeah. And what I was wanting, I think it was like the cause and effect and some of the emphasis on manifesting kind of got old for me.
Hmm.
And I was wanting to go deeper because I was wanting to go more into the depths of mysticism. And I
Hmm.
wasn't hearing that so much. So what happened once I was ready for practitioner training, and honestly, Davina, when I first went in, I wasn't sure I really wanted to be a practitioner. It was kind of like the next step to take. And part of me wanted to, and part of me was terribly resistant because I didn't want anything that looked like being a nun again.
Yeah.
I
Did you
remember,
feel guilty when you left the church? Because in all,
no,
when they make changes, they're like, it takes a lot of courage to leave and leave a church or, leave the status or whatever behind.
you mean the Catholic Church when I left,
Or any church, yeah, for
or any
you.
church?
Yeah.
I have never felt guilt about it ever because
What
I'm
would
so clear this is what I'm supposed to do.
what would you say to somebody that wanted to get out of a evangelical situation or a religious situation, but there was lots of pressure on them to stay?
Oh, that's can be tough, especially if it's family pressure and of course community pressure. But I would say dive into your inner courage, you know. Keep your focus on that which is calling you. And and form some alliances with people who can support you in that. I
Mm-hmm.
think that's really, really important. I was always surrounded by a community of people that supported me no matter what. I think that's so important because when you're getting all of this
Yeah.
pressure, I can only imagine. I didn't get family pressure, so I was blessed that
Oh,
way.
that's good. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
So
I
you
didn't
have
have
your
that.
family trying to make you stay in
No,
in the convent and uh
no.
okay.
I'm
So yeah, because
sure
a
my
lot of
mother would have been happier if I had, but she
uh-huh.
never said it, you
Uh-huh.
know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so I just think that's one of the most important things. Like when we decided to go into practitioner training,
Hmm.
it was Reverend Eunice Chalfant and myself and Bill Ropel. We were all going to the Fullerton Church, and Eunice saw that it was being taught at um, Ernest Holmes College in Los Angeles. So
Mm.
she said, "Wouldn't it be fun if we took it there?"
Uh-huh.
And we're like, "Oh yeah, that'd be fun," you know, because I
Uh-huh.
had already started it at Fullerton and it just didn't work for me.
Oh, that's
So
okay.
it yeah, it just wasn't my people. And so we
Which
went there.
is really important. That's
Important,
just an
yeah,
important point. It's that
yeah,
you got to keep finding your people. And
finding your people,
yeah.
yeah, because I think I went to the first maybe 2 or 3 classes. I know it was more than one class. And
Mhm.
it just wasn't resonating. What I want to tell people, and whether it's your spiritual path or something like practitioner or minister or some particular calling, it has to resonate with you. It has to resonate with you. No, and so you develop a sensitivity to your inner sensitivity, so to speak,
Nice.
and sensitivity to your sensitivity. But we all know deep within. But what happens sometimes is I think we do get pressured, by people around us. Or in our case, we had to drive to Los Angeles from Fullerton during traffic hour. Anybody
Uh,
who has lived in Southern California might know what that is like. And
yeah.
it didn't make sense,
Hmm.
and it was inconvenient, and we all had kids. It was very inconvenient. And yet there was something that just said, do this. You got to just go ahead and do it, no matter what, whether it's inconvenient or not, whether it's a long drive or not, you
Yeah.
got to
Does it
do it.
fit?
And so I just encourage everybody to follow that. I'm so happy now that I did,
Hmm.
because it's changed my life. And then the minute I saw Reverend Michael,
Hmm.
I knew, because he was our teacher, I knew that I was in the right place. I knew that he was my teacher. I knew that I knew him.
Hmm.
It's all that, it's all of that.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
again, it's that fine tuning your inner being. And
Yeah.
and that's the product of all those years of meditation.
I mean,
And
that's how I felt when I walked into Oakland Center for Spiritual Living
yes,
in
yes.
November 2008, because
Oh,
remember
November.
that. Yeah, it was right after the election, and it was a beautiful service because there was a celebration of Barack Obama, the first African American president, being elected. You had Martin Luther King Jr. speaking. The Joy Choir was singing, I think Everyone Deserves a Place at the Table, which was a
Yeah, yeah,
gorgeous
yeah,
song.
yeah,
And I was excited about Obama, and I was very sad because at that time California had just taken away the rights for same-sex couples to marry. So it was a bittersweet election for me. And
yes,
but I remember when I walked in those doors and I heard you speak, I was like, I am at home. This is my home. I just couldn't believe how at home I felt. And so that resonance that you're talking about when you saw Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith, who, for folks, if you don't know him, he was in The Secret. He wrote the book Life Visioning. He's the spiritual leader of the Agape International Spiritual Center in Los Angeles. So when you saw, and this was before he created all of that, which we're
this
going to
was
talk.
before all of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So you saw him and you're like, this is the person I'm here to learn from.
right. And first, I just want to interrupt this for a moment and tell everybody that's watching how awesome Davina is, how grateful I was that she was at our center. And through her work with LGBT, all of those
All
letters,
those letters.
all those letters, we were able to, our choir was able to sing, and we were able to support her
Yeah.
in a rally in particular in San Francisco. And so
Yes, thank
I
you.
just have always appreciated, and the fact that you brought a love to it and a deep spirituality to it. There wasn't, the founder of religious science, Ernest Holmes, says, wouldn't it be wonderful if there were a group that was for something and against nothing? And
Mm,
that was always the stance of our community. We want
yeah.
to be for something and against nothing. And you brought that, and eventually, of course, it was all turned around. But yeah,
Yeah, well, thank you that by being a part of your spiritual community, that helped me anchor even deeper into what my heart wanted.
yeah,
Because it's hard to do those things. You know, again, Dr. King, Gandhi, these
yeah,
awards that you've won. I mean, these are people that were about love first, love, forgiveness, open-heartedness. If we're going to change the world, let's do it in a non-violent way. Let's
yeah,
do it with love. And certainly the community that you created, was a stand for that.
yeah,
And again, I know that a lot of times some of these values are aspirational. We have a hard time maintaining that 24/7, but that aspiration is so important because, like you said, the more we are for love and if we are for things, for a cause, without being against something else. Oh, so much peace, so much love, so much joy. And we, as a world, as a human consciousness, really struggle with just being for and not against.
yeah. I think I don't like anything being a battle. Greg Braden talks about we're in a battle with good
Yeah,
and
we
evil
are.
now, but there is some kind of some conflict going between, oneness and separation, between love
Mhm.
and hate, between, and yeah.
Yeah,
And what supported you too was the fact that you were in spiritual
yeah.
spiritual community, or community of like-minded people, whatever, wherever you find that. is so helpful. That's my whole life has been about community.
Yeah, I
I
agree.
can't imagine not
Well,
being.
and the what community can allow you to do is that battle that you're talking about between good and evil,
Yeah,
that exists inside of us, right? Like,
that's
am
right.
I going to
Yes,
choose love or enmity? Am I going to keep my
right.
heart open or am I going to close my heart?
Yes.
That battle is an internal battle.
Yep.
Then it becomes externalized, but it's based on our own choices. So I know, like, I remember being anchored again in the Oakland Center for Spiritual Community under your spiritual leadership and going to a rally and really, again, I've been studying Dr. King and I'd been studying Gandhi and reading their work. How do they do it? What did they focus on? What were their prayers of strength? And coming face to face with someone who was just shouting us down and really angry
Yes.
and like letting go of all the armor
Hmm.
and just sending love to that person,
Hmm.
being open-hearted. Just they're afraid, they don't know what this means. It's okay. I'm just going to send them love. And how incredible that felt in my own body to
Yes.
just be open-hearted and how they had to look away because it was too much.
Yeah. I'll
Yeah.
never forget that rally,
Yeah. Yeah.
because they couldn't handle it.
No, they couldn't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the
Which
thing.
that's where the love wins.
That's,
Like, it may
yeah.
not be individual couples winning,
Yeah,
a
right.
relationship may or may not last, but love itself,
Yes.
the power of love wins.
Well, the love is the higher vibration.
Right.
And the higher vibration always trumps the lower vibration.
Yeah.
So there's just not as much energy in a lower vibration, although it can feel like there's more energy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But so, and that's why it's so important for people like all of us on this call on this Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
It's so important for us to continually be that loving presence, and it's hard sometimes.
Yeah.
It's not always easy, but and that's what we're called to do, or we wouldn't be here at this point in time.
Absolutely.
What I feel about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So and again, I had this sense when I met you, it felt like, oh, we've been together in lifetimes before.
Yes,
You've
yes,
been my teacher before. It sounds like you had some of that with Michael when you met him.
absolutely.
What happened next on your journey as you began to study with him?
Um, let's see, practitioner training was really interesting because I don't think he really followed the official format.
Mm.
We just did a lot we read a lot of Howard Thurman, who also was an influence on Martin Luther King
Yeah.
Jr., who had spoken with Gandhi, and so who was a mystic in the 20th century.
Yeah.
Um,
Amazing.
and Goldsmith, we did a lot of
Oh,
Goldsmith, Joel
Goldsmith.
Goldsmith, who is definite mystic in the we call this teaching New Thought Ancient Wisdom or New Thought Ageless Wisdom
Mhm.
because we honor all of the indigenous peoples and all of the wisdom that came before the written word, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah. So what happened was I think it was after I'd been in practitioner training for a couple of months, finally it came to me, oh, you are supposed to do this. The first couple of months, I really wasn't sure. And then it became really, really clear um, to do that.
Mhm.
And then after we had 2 years of practitioner training, and we were all praying for Reverend Michael to be guided to know
Mhm.
what to do because he was wondering what his ministry was supposed to be. So we were all, at that time, he wasn't Reverend. At that time, he was Michael
Mhm.
Beckwith. Um, and so we had all been doing our affirmative prayer, knowing the truth of whatever his ministry was supposed to be. It would show itself, it would unfold. And then he decided after class finished, and this was in 1986. I'm pretty sure, yeah, it was 1986. Um, he decided that he wanted to get together a vision group, a group that would come together and meditate and open to what Spirit's vision was for whatever we were supposed to be. All we knew was we were supposed to be a spiritual community of some kind, to whatever it was supposed to look like, to whatever it was supposed to be. And we did that for just a few months when we were guided to open,
Uh-huh.
and so we had our first service, Sunday service, and lots of people came. And then the place where we had it, the Santa Monica Women's Bay Club, decided that we weren't their cup of tea. We were a little rambunctious
Oh,
for them,
wow.
I think.
Okay.
So then we had to, find another place and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And it just kept growing and growing and growing. And it
I
was
mean,
about,
10,000 people at one point the church became, but that's
yeah,
like, sorry, I jump ahead.
yeah. Now, of course, there are thousands all over the world.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but so I'm trying to think. What was I going to
So you,
say?
you were part of the 7 people that envisioned
Yeah, I
the
think it was more
agape.
like 12 of us, actually.
Okay.
But yeah, like 12 apostles. I don't know. It could have been. I like the way you said it. The
Yeah.
seven, what did you say?
The Sacred Seven. Yeah.
Sacred Seven. I
Yeah.
like that. I can go for that. Yeah, so I was part of that. And we just kept opening up to what's the divine idea? What's the vision that's known from all eternity for this center? Because you see, everything that's in existence, there's been a vision for. There's been and that all that means is an idea,
Mhm.
a prototype, an idea, and it's so we just kept opening to it, and we kept seeing expansion, and we kept seeing a lot of things. People got these visuals. I remember one person kept getting visuals of the ocean. Another person kept getting trees and deep roots and um, can't remember all of them, but those were two of the people that got a lot of visual stuff. And some people, like myself, I got some visual stuff, but lots of times it was just a feeling or maybe a word or two. And so and the thing with visioning is it's a really mystical practice.
Yeah.
And I'm doing that with my community now up here in Northern California, Agape Bay Area. We vision every month to what's the idea that wants to unfold itself. Um,
Yeah.
because when we vision consistently and when we're willing to be the vision,
Uh,
that's the key. That's the key right there.
I'm
Am
willing to
I
say yes
willing to
to it.
become what I see? I see a place of unconditional love. Am I willing to be that love?
Mm.
I see that place of expansion. Am I willing to expand? And am I willing to let go of whatever gets in the way of that? So visioning is definitely, yes, it's a communal process, or it could be individual, but it's also how must I individually? How am I called to grow?
Uh-huh.
What's my growing edge? And so we all worked on that. And I remember one Sunday as we were growing, we were at the Miramar Hotel, and I remember Michael said, it's wonderful that you all are so close to each other. He said, and you need to spread yourself out a little bit. If we're going to be all inclusive and,
Mm.
stop hanging out with each other. So, it called us we loved hanging out with each other. And a lot of us hadn't known a lot of us hadn't known each other before Agape. We
Uh,
came from different segments of his life.
uh-huh.
And so it was about radiating, becoming what we were feeling, sensing, seeing in the vision.
Mm.
And that's a huge part of, well, that's the part really of Agape International. And it
Yeah.
just keeps growing. And now, as I mentioned, Reverend Michael, he travels all over the world.
Hmm.
Got people in classes from all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah. So it started out from a very humble place
Starts,
and
yeah,
expanded.
yeah,
So I just want to say, Reverend Michael's book, Michael Bernard Beckwith's book, Life Visioning, the Life
right.
Visioning Process, highly recommend that.
Yes,
Hopefully I'll put a link in the chat or the comment section below. Reverend Joan, you also mentioned affirmative prayer,
yeah.
which is also known as, what's the other name for affirmative prayer?
Spiritual mind treatment.
Spiritual mind treatment. Thank you. My brain was blanking on that. I write about that in my book. It's never too late to be yourself.
Uh-huh.
There's a video I have that I'll link to that
Good.
from International Prayer Day, and it walks you through the steps, teaches you what the steps are. So if you
Great.
know what those steps are, you'll know what Reverend Joan is referring to. So I'll link to that. Um,
And I
Let's,
want to say something
yeah,
about the steps real quick,
yeah, please.
because some people get intimidated by the steps.
Mm,
And the only reason that we have the steps is to get us to that place where we automatically are realizing, abundance or peace or joy or whatever.
yeah.
That's, and if you already know that, really, you know, well, I shouldn't say this, but you can let go of the steps.
Yeah, what I like about
What
this,
I've noticed for myself is that I automatically do them because they assist me so much.
right, right. So your prayer is not wrong, basically, if you
No,
skip the steps or if you mix
no,
up the steps.
yeah,
It's not,
I,
but what you're saying is that it is a process to get you into that higher
yeah,
field. So beginning
yeah.
with gratitude and really just connecting with gratitude and recognizing
I see.
spirit
Yeah,
and then unifying yourself with it. There's a whole
yeah,
way to kind of lift up your
yeah.
vibration in that.
And I just found that extremely helpful. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I went home and I learned those after the first time I went to Fullerton Church of Religious Science. I went home and I learned those steps immediately and started using them and started getting results too.
Yeah, they're really, it's powerful. They're
It's a
powerful.
powerful prayer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So I don't
affirmative.
want to put it down, but I just want to say, because so many people have trouble with them, don't give up, you know, and know that it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice. That's really good advice. So yeah, spiritual mind treatment, affirmative prayer, different kind of prayers. And again, just if you haven't heard of this before, check it out in the comment section. You mentioned oneness earlier. Do you want to talk about oneness? Some people know what that is, some people don't. Yeah.
Basically, it's simply that everything, not just human beings, but human beings, all creatures, all landforms, everything that we see, everything in existence, and everything invisible is one. Because there's only one thing happening, and that is the presence of spirit, or again, whatever we want to call it. We can call it
Mhm.
Yahweh, we can call
Unified
it
field of
Allah,
life.
we can call it, whatever you can call it. Sometimes Ernest Holmes calls it the thing itself.
Mhm.
You don't have to use any particular word for it because people get tripped up on the word God sometimes. But whatever this thing is, it's the only thing that is. It's the only, I mean, I think of it as the primordial energy of life force of the universe, whatever,
Nice.
or the quantum field. I love quantum physics, the quantum field,
Yeah.
in which everything exists, the possibility of everything exists. And so everything is one. And that's what the teaching is really founded on, based on, is this idea of oneness. So there isn't a you and me. There is in the personality level. Yes,
Mhm.
we are very different personality wise. However, our souls, our spirits are one. I like to think of it as we are dimensions of each other. You know,
Oh, that's beautiful.
we're dimensions of each other. And
Mhm.
even now, I go out for walks most every day, and everything I see, I'm blessed to live right by the bay, so I get to walk by the bay every day. And everything I see, everything I hear, now it's so ingrained in me that I just sense the oneness. I know the oneness. And when I'm in that place of oneness,
Mhm.
which is pretty much all the time now, I can't even imagine why would I do anything to hurt any part of creation,
Right.
you know?
We're all related.
Yeah, it's just and it brings up in me, it stirs up love in my heart.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
And I mean, oneness, you can find it, you can find this idea uh, in, Native American culture that we're all related.
yep,
Lakota, you have the term Mitako Yase, all my relations. Um, we have what was the other part of it? Uh, I guess Dr. King talked about the field of mutuality, the garment of mutuality. Jesus talked about, love your neighbor as yourself, which basically, right, which means again, as yourself, we are one. Some of I think it's the Polynesian cultures talk about, or maybe it's the Mayan culture talks about you are another me.
Yes,
So
yes,
this is
yes.
that ageless wisdom that you're talking about.
That's like that dimension of each other.
Yeah,
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 you are me, I am you. I,
right. So again,
and
when
so,
we're anchored in that, why would we want to injure ourselves, our neighbor, we would
right.
do that to somebody.
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. And it's something that my experience of it is it just grows, it expands.
Yeah.
You know, I probably started out at some point in my life with it being an intellectual idea.
Uh-huh.
I'm guessing that that's probably, I can't even remember now. However, then again, meditation,
Mhm.
prayer, spiritual practices, journaling, reading the mystics and the enlightened being. We have so many enlightened beings on the planet right now.
Yeah.
Is all of those practices just reaffirm this oneness? And
Well,
I just
go ahead.
contemplate, pretty much most of my meditations have been contemplations of God, spirit is all that there is. There's just one thing,
Mm.
you know. And then what falls from that is then spirit is who and what I am. And when we get that, because so many of us, I didn't grow up with high self-esteem. I grew up pretty much feeling like I had to be perfect, in order to be loved, in order to be appreciated. I was the oldest of seven kids, and um, yeah, and felt for so much of my life that I had to perform, even when I was doing deep spiritual practice.
Mm.
I think it wasn't until I really started focusing on oneness and on my uniqueness, because I would compare myself to other people. I don't know if anybody here relates to that. I'm guessing that some people do. I would compare myself to other people, and yeah, and it didn't go away right away. And still sometimes it can come up because I think on the spiritual path, we can have these deep realizations. And then, it's like two steps forward and one back.
Mhm.
And then because there are layers to all of this within our consciousness.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so that was part of my journey too, being like, well, can I love myself through all of this? Can I love myself even when my ego mind, my separate self, is judging me for not being good enough, for making this particular mistake?
Yeah.
So
So,
oneness, oneness,
and I
oneness.
remember years ago, and I read it on your suggestion, the book by Jack Kornfield, After the Ecstasy, the Laundry.
Mhm.
And it's about people's incredible oneness experiences, beautiful spiritual experiences that they had where they just lost themselves and were completely in that unified field. And then, like many things, it sort of diminished.
Yeah.
And then they had to just go back to life when they've had been so expansive
Yes.
and then just do the laundry and go back to regular life. Yeah, because it's hard to live in that for some people, or, it's kind of going and touching it and coming back. Um, so let's see, what did I want to say about that? Well, so it sounds like you had some of those experiences. You focus your meditations on kind of trying to remain in that consciousness. And it also sounds like you were sharing about how to respond to the soul and put the ego in its place. Can you
Mhm.
maybe say a little bit about the ego and the soul on the spiritual journey?
Yeah. Um, the ego, first of all, I don't believe in killing off the ego. The ego is here for a purpose. And it's just that the ego needs to be in service to the soul rather than the soul in service to the ego. And sometimes on the spiritual path, we kind of, at the beginning especially, we think that that the ego is in charge at the beginning. It
Mhm.
wants things its way. It does spiritual practices so it can get certain things, any certain manifestations and so forth at a certain point. And by the way, ego, there are a lot of ways to describe ego. I just think of the ego as the finite mind,
Mm.
that mind in me that isn't the divine mind,
Uh-huh.
because we all and that's been molded by our personal experiences in
Hmm.
life, by the way we were raised, by our education, by the way we've been treated by people, perhaps. We've all grown up with most of us anyway, I don't know anybody who didn't grow up with a certain amount of baggage that way. And it's not bad.
Yeah.
It's not bad. So what I've learned to do is through mindfulness meditation, and Cornfield's been a great teacher in this area, Jack Cornfield, is to really simply get still and witness the feelings I'm having, witness the thoughts that are running rampant. That's a witness
That's
consciousness.
the witness
And
consciousness.
that's been one of the best practice, if not the best practice of my life. It's just helped me so much because in that witness consciousness, I'm observing, I'm standing back, observing without judgment all the stuff that's going on, whether it's in my life, whether it's somebody I'm tending to judge, whether it's myself I tend to judge. I'm just witnessing that. And when I simply witness it, it gives it space. It's when it's running rampant and I'm not witnessing it, it's like it continually contracts more. If I'm trying to make it better, if I'm trying to fight it, for example, trying to fight the ego stuff, then I'm just constricting it more. And the stuff, those old thought forms, those old feeling tones, all of that stuff just gets solidified.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if I'm witnessing, I'm not putting any judgment on it. I'm just watching. And when I just watch, this is the observer effect known in quantum physics. When you observe something, it changes it.
Yeah.
And for me, it changes it according to my consciousness, whether I'm judging it or whether I'm just letting it be. It's a powerful practice.
Beautiful. That's really
Anybody can do it, and to practice that mindfulness just throughout the day, just being aware. What am I doing right now? Where's my attention right now?
so kind of there's a beautiful explanation of witness consciousness. As you move forward from that, can you explain surrender and the concept of
Oh,
spiritual surrender?
yeah, surrender, the S word. Surrender is a word people do not like very much because a lot of people think of it as surrender to the God power or to some other power outside of themselves, that is going to test you or uh, create suffering for you. Or, the reality is surrender isn't any of that. For me, surrender has become freedom,
Mm,
frankly, freedom. I am just surrendering to what wants to evolve next. I do my spiritual practice and I surrender what wants to happen next. Because that I have discovered that when I come from my surface mind, my finite mind,
mhm.
it's not really as good as when I surrender. And I'm not surrendering to something or someone outside. I'm surrendering to my own soul, to my
Mm,
own spirit, to what wants to happen. What's my soul calling me to? And I can surrender to that. It's surrendering basically to the next stage of your soul's evolution,
yeah,
and so it's a whole different idea than that old religious idea. I surrender to God, and at least when I was growing up Catholic, that idea of surrender was giving something up, and things do fall away when you surrender, but it's not like, I have to struggle to give something up. It's more, oh, okay, I'm surrendering to that inner calling. I'm surrendering to what wants to happen next in my life.
beautiful.
Does that help,
Yeah,
Davina? Is
yeah,
there?
that's great. Yeah,
I
absolutely.
just
Surrendering to your
mostly,
soul's evolution. Hmm.
yeah, mostly that it's not surrendering to some other power or force outside of yourself.
Yeah, I
That's
mean,
the main thing.
right. I mean, I think what we're talking about is we're talking about spiritual tools that can help you on your
Yes.
spiritual journey or with your soul's evolution. So, witness consciousness is one, which you said, breathing, meditating, taking a step back, observing your thoughts and feelings, surrendering to what wants to unfold next. And can we talk a little bit about the peace that surpasses human understanding? And that's something that's spoken about in, is it Philippe? Philippines, in the Bible, in the New Testament.
Philippians.
Yeah, yeah. Sorry, that's
I'm
not.
not sure where it's. I'm not sure where it's because honestly,
Yeah.
I have studied most of the Bible I've studied is the teachings of Jesus.
Okay.
When it
Yeah.
gets to the different epistles, I'm not sure
Okay. I
exactly.
know it comes out of that
Yeah,
text.
it comes out of that. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
what was your understanding of that peace that surpasses human understanding? How would you
oh,
explain
it's
that?
that peace that's present within me all the time.
Mm.
You know, when things are difficult, I can take a breath. The breath really helps to get there. I can take a deep breath and I can just, you know, taking a deep breath or a few deep breaths really assists in getting to that place of peace within. It's that place that can't be touched by anything in the outer world. It's that place that's never been, it's that soul place that's never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. It's that, it's just that inner place of, ah, yeah.
Mhm.
And the beautiful thing about it, again, meditation, prayer,
Mhm.
visioning, spiritual practices, whatever your practices are, it can be walking meditation, it can be yoga, it can be Tai Chi, Qigong, whatever. It all it helps us to remember that place of peace. It's not something that we have to make happen because the peace that passes understanding is within us already. It's already within us. We don't have to work to get to it. What we have to do, which is what most of the spiritual journey is about, we have to let go of anything that has obstructed this peace, any ideas that have obstructed it.
Mhm.
Um,
You have to step out
you
of the mind.
yeah, yeah. And it's like now with the election and everything coming up, so many people allow what's going on politically to create fear, to take away that peace.
Yeah.
And we don't have to.
Yeah.
We don't have to do that. And it's again, it's a practice. All of this stuff, Davina, is a practice.
Mhm.
That means we practice and it's takes discipline, you know?
I think about Thich Nhat Hanh,
Yes.
the Buddhist monk who would have won the Nobel. He was nominated by Martin Luther King Jr. for a Nobel Peace Prize for his work with American vets and of the Vietnam War and Vietnamese people and refugees. And I think in his book, Peace in Every Step, is where he talks about the meditation practice of breathing in,
Mhm.
I have arrived, breathing out, I am home.
Yes,
Arrived, I am home. And that one moment at a time, we can experience peace and we can get through whatever it is that we're getting through.
that's beautiful.
But it
Yes.
is stepping out of the mind and
Hmm.
it's coming back to the body and to the breath.
Yeah, it's really important. And it's always been important. And I think now at this time in history, it's more important than ever that we learn how to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of things that are very terrifying for people, and there's
Yes.
so much uncertainty, climate issues and whatnot. And so really the biggest, people think I'm going to go buy a gun and that's going to solve all my
Right.
problems.
No one.
Actually, learn to breathe and meditate. That is going to be your best bet
Yeah.
is we have to learn how to breathe and
Mhm.
meditate and soothe our physical body and connect with our soul's wisdom.
Absolutely. It's about David Hawkins. I love David
Yeah,
Hawkins.
you do.
Transitioned a few years ago, but I love his books. And his first one, I think, is Power versus Force.
Hmm.
That force, like I have to get my gun out or I have to make people do this, or power is an inner power. It's divine power and we all have it within us.
Hmm.
And when I'm anchored in that divine power, I'm not afraid. And it's a work in progress, let's put it that way. It's a work in progress because we're continually evolving into our greatest yet to be, you know.
Yeah.
Because I sometimes I think in my arrogance, I think, well, I'm always at peace now. And then doggone if something won't happen, that'll show, oh, you've still got a ways to go here, you know.
Interesting. Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's amazing that you spend more of your time in peace than not, because
Yeah,
that's a real gift that you have earned through your practice. Because most people do not spend most of their time in peace. Most of the time people spend in struggle and chaos and fear and
yeah.
worry, and that there are moments of peace. But
Mm,
again, what you're sharing is that the more we do our spiritual practices, the more we surrender, the more we do witness consciousness, the more we open our heart, the more we pray, we meditate, we gather in spiritual community, the more likely we're going to keep anchoring in and touching that peace and
absolutely.
spending more of our time there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you speak to this idea of cosmic consciousness?
Well, first of all, there are two, cosmic can be taken two different ways. Cosmic with a K is
Mhm.
the allness, the isness, the divine, all of that. Cosmic with a C is that consciousness anchored on earth or in the world, or,
Mm.
more, what do I want to say? Because it's in all the galaxies and so forth too. It's
Yeah.
just the cosmic with a K is the allness, the isness that can't really be described, is how I think of it. And then the cosmic with a C is, being that consciousness in human form. That's the way I look at it. I don't know if everybody would agree to that, but that's my
Yeah.
way. I love the word cosmic. I love it too. And I think more and more and more, I'm so aware that, gosh, that there's so many people in this cosmos that we don't know about,
Mhm.
you know? I, yeah, there's no question that there's so much life, so many creatures, so many people on different planets in the cosmos. And so it's like we become a galactic community, a cosmic community. What were you going to say?
About really like leaving yourself, letting yourself be open to the
Yeah,
oneness, to
yes,
spirit on the most magnificent way, like just opening up your
yes,
crown chakra and
yeah,
allowing that wisdom to come through.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, is there anything I haven't asked you that you'd like to share?
Mm. Um, I encourage everybody because honestly, I'm so grateful for these spiritual practices, these spiritual tools. And there are a lot more than we've mentioned here today, that's for sure. There are a lot. And your spirit will guide you to where you need to be, just like my spirit guided me to be where I am now. I never ever thought I would be a practitioner, and then that was a joy. And then I never ever thought I would never be a minister. I would never be standing on a platform and speaking. And there's that saying that, God doesn't choose the qualified, God qualifies the chosen. And that's what happened with me. And again, that's part of that surrender. Okay, Spirit, I don't know. I'll never forget the first Sunday that I was speaking at Agape International. I was terrified. And I got up and did it, and it was so joyful.
Hmm.
you know. And sometimes I still get terrified, and I know, you know, God is qualifying me. God's, the spirit. That's the surrender. That's I yield to spirit. Okay, spirit, whatever has to happen today. And it doesn't mean that I don't prepare, because that's really important to prepare our consciousness.
Yeah.
But then when I get up to speak something, or like today, just let it all go and see what spirit does. And it's so much fun. And it's always created from the collective consciousness. That's what I'm aware of. We are so one. That goes back to oneness. We are so one that, whoever is in the audience, whoever's in the congregation, whoever, that their consciousness contributes to what's happening here. So, and I love that. Oneness, oneness, oneness. It's all about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you for
Thank
sharing all
you.
of that. I
Thank
appreciate
you,
that.
Davina. It's such a joy just to be with you.
Always a pleasure to be with you, Reverend Joan. Thank you so much.